FNAF 1 came out a decade ago, and we still don't have a definitive answer on when it takes place. Some of the other games do. FNAF 2 we know for a fact happens from November 8th to November 13th in 1987. FNAF 3 we don't know exactly, but it at least heavily implies it takes place 30 years after a place closes down, so we can kind of move it around. But FNAF 1 doesn't have either of these things. The best we've been able to do is just come up with speculation and roughly guess where it is, let alone the year. But of course, something came out recently that changes all of that. And of course, that thing I'm talking about is the new FNAF book the week before. With it, I think we've got a pretty good argument for an exact year of when Five Nights at Freddy's 1 takes place. So Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So to start, what exactly do we know about FNAF 1's placement relative to the other games? Less so a year placement and more so an order of events. Well, like I mentioned, we know that it takes place after FNAF 2 and before FNAF 3. For FNAF 2, it ends saying that the toys will be scrapped, but the originals will be kept to hopefully be used in the future, this being that future. Furthermore, we get paid less than we do in FNAF 1, implying that inflation had slowly risen wages over the gap. Furthermore, and this is technically speculation, but it's heavily suggested that the missing child incident took place in 1985. And in FNAF 1, the animatronic suits are already haunted. You better behave. I'm not trying to play right now. You want to play, don't you? Like I was saying, by the time of FNAF 1, the animatronics are already haunted. So this has to take place after the missing child incident. We also know that the missing child incident shut down the restaurant soon after. Combine all of that with the fact that on night 1, the phone guy says that these animatronics have been doing the same song and dance for 20 years, and we're pretty definitely certain it can't be that first restaurant. If it closes within the year after the missing child incident, but they've been singing and dancing for 20 years, something doesn't add up. So the game pretty definitively takes place after FNAF 2, as definitive as anything in this franchise can be. We also are pretty certain that it takes place before FNAF 3. FNAF 3 says on its Steam page that it takes place 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's closes its doors. Now, whether this is the original or FNAF 1, we're not really sure yet. Regardless, the whole premise of FNAF 3 is that the Freddy's brand is this kind of like urban legend status that's been closed forever. So it would make sense if FNAF 1 closed before FNAF 3. As far as for the other games and how they relate to FNAF 1, it's less clear. Well, at least before FNAF 3. Things like FNAF 6, Ultimate Custom Night, Security Breach, Help Wanted, those all take place after FNAF 3. The thing that's unclear here is Sister Location and also Follow Me. Follow Me being the minigame in FNAF 3 where the animatronics from FNAF 1 are inside a closed down FNAF 1, and one by one they are disassembled by William Afton until eventually he dies in a springlock suit. And since Sister Location is so separate from everything else, it's just hard to place in general. What it really comes down to is what you think Follow Me is trying to tell us. If you think Molten MCI is true, or some variation of it, in other words, the original FNAF animatronics were melted down and used for experiments in Sister Location, if you believe that's true and Follow Me is where he gets them, then Follow Me and Sister Location have to take place before FNAF 1. But if you don't think that Follow Me is for that, then they can pretty much take place at any time. Me personally, I do believe in Molten MCI, but I also think Follow Me takes place after FNAF 1, so what gives? Well, in FNAF 2, we learn that the original animatronics are being used for spare parts for the toys, and it's my belief that those spare parts are still partially possessed by the missing child incident victims. So when they're moved over to the toys, that's why the toys start acting strangely. And at the end of FNAF 2, the originals are kept safe, but the toys are fully scrapped. So it's in my opinion that William melts down the toy animatronics first and uses them in order to do the Sister Location experiments. And then post FNAF 1, when he needs more Remnant, he goes back to the then closed FNAF 1 and does Follow Me, and then gets, spring-locked and dies. To put all this together, in my opinion, the order of the games here are FNAF 2, then FNAF 1, then Follow Me, then Sister Location, then FNAF 3. Is that definitive? No, but it's what I definitively believe in. That order in mind, we still don't have a year. Again, in FNAF 2, we know it's 1987, and FNAF 3, if it's 30 years after a closure, it's either 2015 or whenever FNAF 1 closes. Everything else, though, is up in the air. But there have been plenty of theories for FNAF 1's year specifically. So what are those theories? One of the more popular theories, especially because it was talked extensively about on Game Theory, is using minimum wage to figure that that out. FNAF 1 gives us a paycheck at the end of our week shift and an overtime payment at the end of the 6th night. So essentially, we get a paycheck for 5 days of a 6-hour shift. And they did the math on this. Look, I'm not a mathematician. They watched their video if you want the full method, but essentially they mathed it out and found that the closest link to minimum wage was 1993. And many people just assume that's correct. After all, it's within our established time slot after 1987 and sometime before 2015 the earliest, and it just kind of feels right, you know? And if you think it's loose evidence, sure, but there wasn't much to go directly against it, so why not? But again, that's not the only theory surrounding this. Another very popular one goes off of what Phone Guy tells us on night 1.
If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too.
So if we listen to what Phone Guy, or as we now know, Ralph, says, that would mean that these suits have been in use for around 20 years. If that's true, well, we know Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened in 1983, which would place this game squarely in 2003 or later. Many people who believe this theory also believe that the pizzeria is closed by the time of FNAF 1, and we're just watching over a closed building like the FNAF movie suggests. That's not necessary for this theory, but they often go hand in hand. My preferred theory for finding the year of FNAF 1 is by going by the days of the week. In FNAF 2, we know the definitive dates that we are paid for our work. Damn, no one wants to hang out with me today. November 12th and an overtime payment on November 13th in 1987. Notably, that's Thursday the 12th and Friday the 13th. And I wouldn't doubt if Scott made the horror game happen on Friday the 13th on purpose. Regardless, if we are to assume that Fazbear's is a consistent company that pays their employees around the same day of the week every time, which 99% of companies do, then we have something to work with here. We know that Fazbear's pays their employees on Thursday the 12th, and you'll receive an overtime payment the day you work. So then it's very notable that in FNAF 1, we get 2 paychecks, and although we don't get a year, we get a date. November the 12th and November the 13th. If we assume that they're still paying the end of your shift on Thursday and an overtime payment on Friday, then all we have to do is find the Friday the 13ths that have occurred in November after 1987, and we'll get a range of years. Doing this, you get the years 1992, 1998, and 2009. Obviously, some happen after 2009, but that gets really far away. And honestly, personally, 2009 feels a little too far removed and too soon to FNAF 3 for me to feel like it makes that much sense. Similarly, with 1992, it's really soon after 1987, and that also feels a little too quick. So personally, I'd been going along with the idea that FNAF 1 takes place in 1998. Admittedly, I don't have much evidence to suggest that of these 3 years, 98 is the correct one. It's more of a vibes-based thing. God, this desert is the worst. At this point, I'd take one of the dangerous floors over this. At least I won't go thirsty. Thanks to Gamersupps. Gamersupps is a powdered drink company that offers zero sugar drinks with or without caffeine. And their flavors are delicious while being keto friendly, but you don't just have to take my word for it. You can actually get free samples off of their website, you just have to pay for shipping. So if you've never tried them before, go do it. It's free. Not to mention, if you like it, they're affordable. A 100 serving container is 40 cents per serving. We just got the Dragon Fruit Punch one, and it's by far our new favorite. This isn't Dragon Fruit, this is Incel Tears. It's like a peaches and cream. It's really good. But the Dragon Fruit Punch one, best one so far. If you want to try out Gamersupps and support the channel, you can use my code RYTOAST or click the link in the description and get 10% off your entire order. And I get a little kickback every time somebody does. Thanks again to Gamersupps for helping me get through this desert. All those theories in mind, what new information could have shaken this up? Well, as always for this past month, The Week Before did. The Week Before is the newest FNAF book to come out of this franchise, and frankly, one of my favorites they've ever made. It's an interactive novel, which is a choose-your-own-adventure style book where you play as Ralph, the phone guy from FNAF 1 on his last week of work, the week directly before FNAF 1. Essentially, like the back of this book says, this is a direct prequel to Five Nights at Freddy's 1, one of the most unambiguously in-game timeline books we've ever received, and it is chock full of lore. So, spoilers ahead. Throughout the book, we've learned that Ralph has recorded a lot of voicemail messages for Freddy Fazbear's throughout the years. He's also worked with the company for a long time. In fact, he's recorded messages for not only the FNAF 1 location, but also the FNAF 2 location. I have reason to believe that this also extends to the original Freddy's location. After all, Phone Guy sounds the same in 1, 2, and the recordings found in 3. security, and I think this book is codifying that as purposeful. Anyway, throughout the true playthrough of this book, you record the messages we hear in FNAF 1. Not only that, but if you punch in 1987 in the voicemail receiver at some point in the story, you get to hear the FNAF 2 Night 5 phone call, in which it's changed. Every other message in this book is word for word correct with the games, but this FNAF 2 Night 5 phone call is slightly changed. First, I'll read you what the book says. It sounds familiar, then you recognize it as your own voice. You're listening to a recording you made some time ago for new employees. Someone has edited it. Hey, good job, Night 5. Keep a close eye on things tonight, okay? We don't have a replacement for your shift yet, but we're working on it. Well, just get through one more night. Hang in there. Good night. The book even mentions someone has edited it. Listen to the one we hear in FNAF 2.
Oh, hey, good job, Night 5. Keep a close eye on things tonight, okay? From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, you know, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available. We don't have a replacement for your shift yet, but we're working on it. We're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that. It was closed for years, though. I doubt we'll be able to track anybody down. So just get through one more night. Hang in there. Good night.
This tells us a lot of things. For one, absolute confirmation that FNAF 2 takes place during FNAF 2. We're not going to an old pizzeria. After all, someone has edited that phone message since FNAF 2 before FNAF 1. But again, this is showing us that all of these voicemail messages are word for word true to the games. So all that to say, it's very interesting that on night 1, if you punch in the voicemail code, you can get this voicemail. You do so, and the message begins playing. It takes you a moment to realize you're listening to your own voice. Hello, welcome to your first security shift. I'm taping this message to help you get settled on your first night and prepare you for your new and exciting career path. First, here's a greeting from management. Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life. Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for damage to your property or person. Upon discovery of damage, or if death has occurred, a missing persons report will be filed within 90 days, or as soon as property and premises have been thoroughly, you hang up. You know the rest. It's strange to listen to a recording of yourself, especially one from so long ago. If you remember correctly, your daughter had just been born, a big reason why you couldn't take the night shift yourself at the time. The notable thing about this message is it does not match with FNAF 1, FNAF 2, or the recordings of FNAF 3. Don't get me wrong, the greeting from management, that's the same. But the lines, welcome to your first security shift. I'm taping this message to help you get settled on your first night and prepare you for your new and exciting career path, does not occur in FNAF 1, 2, or 3. This is unique to this voicemail. It is a voicemail we've never heard until now. And if we can find out when this voicemail was recorded, we will get a firm date for FNAF 1. Because like Ralph said, if you remember correctly, your daughter had just been born. And according to page 229, however, getting your 11-year-old daughter, that's all I needed to read there, 11 years old. This message was recorded 11 years before FNAF 1. So when was this message recorded? Realistically, in my opinion, the debate here is between the FNAF 2 location and the original Freddy's location. After all, he points out that this was so long ago and he was young and naive back then. So that, plus an 11-year gap, in my opinion, doesn't make that much sense to be the FNAF 1 Freddy's. Sure, it was probably open for a couple years, but more than a decade? This place is barely running at all times. However, outside of this information, we're a little lost at sea here. There's nothing here that really tells us which way this message goes, besides that it was probably either original Freddy's or FNAF 2 Freddy's. So instead, I think our best course of action is to go over those old theories that already have years that have some evidence backing them up. And if we can link up one of those years with this new evidence, suddenly we have corroborating evidence and a much stronger argument. So what years could possibly work? The theory going off of the fact that Ralph says these animatronics have been doing the same song and dance for 20 years gave us the year 2003. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to line up with the 11-year gap that we got. After all, 11 years would bring us back to 1992. and FNAF 2 definitely closes within 1987. So again, either the FNAF 1 location is open for more than a decade, or this one doesn't line up. It's possible, but we should move on to something that might give us more confirmed possibilities. The minimum wage method gave us the year 1993, and this one is a solid maybe, because 11 years before 1993 is 1982. And sure, that is a year before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza even opened, opening in 1983. But it's worthwhile to mention that he does state, if you recall correctly. So not only is the 11-year gap possibly, 1 or 2 years off, but if my daughter is 11 years old and I'm thinking about something that happened within her first 2 years of life, saying this is right after she was born isn't out of the picture here. So since it's only a year off, I'm willing to give 1993 some wiggle room. Currently it's our best contender, but we'll move on to see if anything else fits the bill. The weekday method gave us 3 years to pick from: 1992, 1998, and 2009. 2009 gives us a similar but more severe issue that 2003 did. 11 years ago is sometime in the late 90s, and there's no real compelling evidence to say that FNAF 1, if it takes place in 2009, had been opened a decade prior. Just the same with 1992. It's like the minimum wage argument, but worse, because now it's taking us back to 1981, and we're getting further and further back from 1983, and I'm getting less and less generous with how much leeway Ralph's memory gives us. So which one do we have left? 1998. And isn't it interesting that exactly 11 years before 1998 is 1987, the exact year that FNAF 2 was open. If this message was recorded in 1987 at the FNAF 2 location, then this book would confirm that FNAF 1 takes place in 1998, corroborating the information of the days of the week that FNAF 2 gives us with the dates that FNAF 1 gives us. Which would mean this theory is stating that FNAF 1 Night 1 is exactly November 8th, 1998.
Isn't that what I said 5 minutes ago? But now it's proven.
But is it proven? Realistically, no. This is still heavy speculation and betting on the fact that Scott purposefully chose Friday the 13th and not just haphazardly. Not to mention, the 1993 minimum wage argument still works with this theory and the new information if you fudge the numbers a little bit. And since we're going off of Ralph's memory, which he remembers some things wrong in here, I think that's fair enough to say. So what do you think? Have I convinced you on 1998, or are you still a 1993 truther? Or do you fully disagree with what I've said so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But speaking of 1987, if you want to know what this book says about the bite of 87, I did a whole video on it last week, which you can find right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastTart or post it to the official Discord. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.